In the beginning, the day was brilliant, everyone looked beautiful, the ceremony was perfect, and everyone was looking forward to the reception. I think most weddings do this, I'm not sure, but after the dinner, the best man will give a speech along with other people. My brother was the best man, and at the end of his speech he asked his girlfriend to stand up. I was so confused. He then proceeded to propose. My mother started crying tears of happiness, and everyone was so happy apart from me, my husband, my dad, and husband's family. The rest of the night was all about them. Me and husband just faded into the background, so I pulled my brother and his now fiancé away from the crowd into a deserted room and started yelling and crying at them, saying how could they make this day about them. This was the following conversation. Me: how could you do this to me? Brother: what do you mean? Does my happiness mean nothing to you? Stop acting so selfish. Me, now crying: what do you mean? This is my wedding that I and husband paid for. This is supposed to be our special day. We shouldn't be outshined by you. Then my dad and husband came into the room and saw me crying. Dad: what the hell? Brother: have you been thinking about what on earth made you think to propose at your sister's wedding? Brother's fiancé: can everyone please stay calm? Me, angry: shut up. I have to admit that was not my proudest moment. His fiancé stood there shocked that I would say something like that to her. Brother: what? Do not talk to her like that. They both then left. We still haven't spoken to them, and my mom thinks we overreacted, but my dad hasn't spoken to them either. Not the idiot. Proposing at someone else's wedding is super tacky and rude. Even though they say it's not about anyone but the bride and groom, you know it'll be talked about by guests way more than the wedding itself. Plus, how is their partner supposed to feel special being proposed to at an event that's all about celebrating another couple's love? I'd be super bummed if my husband had proposed to me at someone else's wedding instead of proposing in a moment that we could call our own. Not the idiot. My friends hosted a proposal at their wedding. During the bouquet toss, the bride turned around really quick and handed the bouquet to her friend. The boyfriend dropped to a knee and proposed. It was a sweet moment for all involved. It was at the end of the night, and then they opened up the dance floor. This was not that. This was a horrible hijacking of someone else's expensive party. You should go to their wedding and announce your pregnancy during their toasts. Not the idiot. This is a nightmare. I would have asked staff to remove them without even saying anything to them, but I understand your response. As an aside, our DJ assured us they'd cut the mic of anyone who appeared to be asking for their partners to join them up there or reached into their pockets for something. I'm surprised more people didn't stop them, to be honest. The in-laws and friends must have been incensed. Sorry that happened to you. My wife and I have a 6-year son. My mom is 70, and by her own admission slowing down. She's never been dependable, always late, and prone to decisions not grounded in common sense. She's also a hoarder, and neither her home nor car places my wife and I consider safe for a child. The last time we brought him to her house, we found a dozen used insulin needles on the kitchen counter, and shards of broken glass on the floor from a picture that had fallen off the wall. For his first 5 years, we had never left him alone with her, though we had frequently left him alone with my wife's mom. We just didn't think she could handle it. This had been a source of some tension with her. 2 winters ago, my wife's work had an employee dinner. We asked her to watch him at our house for these 3 hours. Backstory: we had a wood stove, used for supplemental heat. The day before, we had a chimney fire that we managed to put out without significant damage. We obviously didn't relight the wood stove the next day, as we hadn't had it examined yet. My mom had never used a wood stove before, and we had a perfectly functional heating system set at a comfortable temp. It didn't even occur to us that someone with no knowledge of how to use a wood stove would attempt to use one while in someone else's home. An hour into dinner, I get a call. She decided it was cold, built a fire, and the house is full of smoke and the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors are going off. Keep in mind that these detectors announce in English fire and carbon monoxide. We race home to find her in the house with our son, huddled in his bedroom. Several windows are open, but the house is filled with smoke. Several alarms are still going off, except for the one next to my son's bedroom. She had decided to remove the battery and disconnect it from power to disable it to keep him from being scared. In the process, she had managed to fall off a chair she was using to reach the alarm, and break her arm, as we later discovered. My son is terrified. She maintains to this day she did nothing wrong. I explained to her that even when functioning correctly, a wood stove isn't something someone with no knowledge should be playing around with. I explained that smoke and CO alarms are in houses to alert you to when conditions in the house are dangerous. I explained that CO makes the exposed sleepy until they pass out and asphyxiate, and that deciding to stay in the house and ignore and even disable the alarms is an especially bad decision. She also maintains that it's not fair that we have since refused to allow her to be in charge of our son again. This Christmas, she bought tickets for the Elf musical as a present for him without consulting us, and was hurt that we wouldn't let her take him, and continues to request that we reimburse her for the tickets, even though she ended up bringing a friend to the show. Not the idiot. As a parent, your highest duty is to take death off the table. Your mom is an unreasonable risk. You'll never convince her of this fact, so just go about your business and don't explain yourselves to her. Having said that, I'd be comfortable leaving the kid with her in a public theater for 2 hours if you did the drop-off and pickup. Still, you don't owe her anything for a ticket she used and didn't consult you about beforehand. You are the idiot. If you were a decent person, you would see your mother's mental health is not what it should be and maybe she needs help. From her hoarding to her reaction to the smoke alarms, it's clear she has issues. If you are aware she needs help, then you should not have left your son in her care. Even if neither of the above applies, you should have warned her about the stove no matter if she knew how to use one or not. If you are leaving your child and home in the care of someone else, you should always make them aware of any dangers before leaving. Not the idiot. I'm not a doctor, but I'm wondering if there is any onset dementia happening here. If this is the case, then absolutely don't leave her alone with the kid. But even without this, it is your call. You are responsible for your child's well-being. Never feel bad for doing what is in the best interests of your child. Yes, awful that your mom is going to be mad about it, so let her. But do invite her to stuff you can all do together. If she is losing capacity, it'll only get worse, and her already bad habits are a line drawn in the sand for you. Don't apologize for that. I am 23 in my first year of grad school and doing a paid internship in my field. In February, a sub-con, Richard, came in and literally charmed the pants off me. I mean literally. He's 15 years older and basically hit all my buttons. Within a week of meeting him, he took me on a trip to Hawaii. It was a business trip for him. He bought me an insane amount of gifts and I was between living situations. He set me up in a nice hotel for a month, hotel with all expenses paid, also had to do with his business, and I was on cloud 9. He paid for the damage deposit and first month's rent on my new apartment. What was really happening is I was an idiot and blinded to the glaring red flags that he gave me. He would disappear without contact for days and up to a week at a time. The only number he gave me was a Google Voice number. He could only sleep over on Tuesdays and I never saw where he lived, and he lied about not having social media. I never even thought to check. Maybe 2 weeks ago, a friend and I went to the movies. I saw Richard and what turned out to be his gorgeous wife and even more gorgeous 2 kids. I was stunned and wanted to faint. He absolutely saw me, but I apparently am so easily manipulated by him. He essentially told me with his eyes, be cool and don't make a scene, and I didn't. I left and have been crying my eyes out essentially non-stop for the last 2 weeks, for me and for his family. I never wanted to be this person, but here I am. I finally looked him up on Facebook and sure enough, that was his family. He posted happy pictures at his kids' swim meets and on dates with his wife while I was in the hotel room he was paying for. The level of deception is insane. I know I have to tell his wife, but would I be an idiot if, as opposed to just saying I'm so sorry, I had an affair with your husband, I basically laid out a list of everything he did for me, the trips, the gifts, the hotels and on and on? Or is that too much and I need to allow her the space to process the information and extent of his affair in her own time? Edit, I just called his wife and told her that I needed to her and told her my name, not what I was calling about. She just called me, insulted me and hung up. Now what? I can't believe I got myself into this. I'm devastated. I can't even imagine what my parents would say if they ever found out about this. I'm so ashamed. Edit 2, lots of people telling me to break it off with him. Just to be clear, I hadn't seen him since the weekend before the movie. The night of the movie, he ghosted me. Deleted his Google Voice, didn't answer an email I sent asking for an explanation. It's over with him and it would be even if he hadn't ghosted me. Not the idiot, but you don't need to go into all the gory details. It's important for the wife to know that he took you on trips because he clearly told her some sort of lie to cover his absence. Tell her the logistics of it. He took you on this trip, he was with you overnight on these dates, so that she understands how he managed to snow her. If she needs more info, in some places you can recoup marital funds spent on an affair partner in the divorce settlement. Give it when asked. But be prepared for her to not believe you and for him to get really nasty. You are the idiot. And so is he, of course. You aren't stupid, and there's no way you thought his behavior wasn't suspicious. You just didn't want to believe what you deep down inside knew. Do not tell his wife, it is not your place. Trust she will figure him out on her own, as I'm sure you're not the first. If she somehow contacted you, then yes, be honest, but it's not your place to contact her. You want to do that for you, not her. In response to your edit, her response is irrelevant. Whether or not she was grateful for the information or hated you, you've done the best you could to set things right and make sure the truth was told. You know she knows, and that won't haunt you anymore. Now what? Now you reach out to a close friend or go smash a plate or whatever your coping mechanism has to be. And a year from now this won't matter. I love my boyfriend to death, but we have reached an impasse. I moved into my current house last year after I got a dog, specifically because I wanted her to have a huge backyard to roam around in. I bought her doggy door, and she loved it. A few months later my boyfriend moved in from his apartment, though he still has the apartment, and was excited about the backyard because he always wanted chickens. He eventually bought 4 chickens, and at first, he kept them in an extra large dog cage, but let them free roam for most of the day. That was until we realized that my dog likes to chew their feathers off. So then the chickens had monitored outside time. Then he decided that that wasn't fair to the chickens, and now won't let my dog have free access outside. He keeps her locked in her cage all day when I'm not home, and if she does need to go outside, he makes her put a muzzle on. She can no longer go outside and play with her toys, and my house is way too small for her to have room to play. He's even started scolding me even when I let her walk around inside without the muzzle inside, because he says if I'm not paying attention she might sneak outside and hurt the chickens. I got angry because the backyard was for her. He doesn't even pay rent on my house. He refuses to make a properly gated area in the yard, even though there's plenty of room. When I remind him that my dog has a right to freedom in my house, he just reminds me of how bad the chickens look after she was done chewing them up. When I suggested him get rid of the chickens, he says he can't because of all the missing feathers. At this point, I think the only thing I can do is to ask him to leave and take his chickens. I know he lives in an apartment, but at this point, that's his problem. Not the idiot. You did kind of bury the lead. The problem here isn't chicken versus dog, it's, no offense, a freeloader dictating how you conduct yourself and your dog, in your home. I can't speak for the rest of your relationship, but if this is a typical example of how he handles disagreements, he sounds cruel and entitled. Sorry if I'm jumping to conclusions. But this sounds like a wake-up call for you. Tell him the chickens go or he goes with them, with zero guilt. Not the idiot, there are many ways to make it acceptable for both the chickens and the dog. The yard was meant for the dog, so that is their territory, and your BF is being a huge idiot for treating the dog and you like that. It's not that hard to make a nice coop for them to be in while the dog roams and lets them out at other times. I wouldn't put up with someone telling me how to live my life in my house, or how I should raise my dog. Not the idiot. Not only have you allowed him the privilege of living in your home rent-free, but you even welcomed and accommodated him and his wants. For him to not show the same courtesy to you, especially when it's your house? Paying for rent, utilities, etc., I assume? It's disgustingly rude. You and your dog deserve the freedom to live comfortably. You have every right to ask him to leave. If he has such a problem with the dog being around the chickens, he should have had the initiative to make a safe, gated space for them in the first place. Adding a muzzle to her and scolding you both is selfish. My mom and dad were married for 35 years. 3 years ago my mom was unexpectedly diagnosed with colon cancer and died tragically a month later. It was hard on the whole family. I still struggle with depression. But I would say it affected my dad the worst. He lost his best friend, soulmate, his lover, his whole world crashed down on him. My dad has moved on since then. He's been dating this woman for about 2 years now. Last Christmas my dad bought an engagement ring, got down on one knee and proposed to her in front of the whole family. She turned him down because she said he was still in love with my mom. It bothers her that my dad still goes to the cemetery to visit her every day after work. This past Saturday, the day before Easter, I took my kids to my dad's house to dye Easter eggs. It's been a family tradition ever since I can remember. Everything was going great, everyone was having a good time, and my dad just started bawling his eyes out. He just started missing my mom and was overwhelmed with his emotions. When my dad said that he was really missing my mom, his girlfriend got super angry and stomped off upstairs to her bedroom. I went on Facebook to express my emotions. I went on a rant talking about how it's a shame she's jealous of a dead woman. I told her she needs to cut my dad some slack and maybe she could have a man that loves her like that. She unfriended me and had my dad call me and tell me it was not my place to say anything. But I feel like it is. You are the idiot. It's already an emotional topic. Yes, maybe she didn't deal with it in the right way, but it must be hard for her too. Him bawling his eyes out could be seen by her as her being lesser than your mom. No one wants to feel second best. And secondly, you could have dealt with it a lot better. Ranting on Facebook is passive aggressive and doesn't achieve anything. You are very emotionally invested with your mom and dad obviously, and it seems like you feel that she is still very much an outsider. Maybe trying to think of how the whole thing made her feel and talking to her would have been a better way to deal with it. Everyone's the idiot here, your dad being the least idiot. Most idiot is your dad's girlfriend, for obvious reasons. You're the middle here for using social media before a conversation. I don't fault her for being upset that he's not over her, but I do fault her for her reaction. Your dad is the least idiot, but still. He clearly is not okay. He isn't in a place to be dating. It seems like he's trying to fill a void. He's preventing himself from becoming okay on his own, and he's wasting GF's time and might be becoming dependent on her. Please, see if your dad could speak with a grief counselor. You are the idiot. The only purpose in going to FB was to shame her, especially since she was one of your FB friends. She's been your dad's GF for 2 years and you know how he feels. Since he's tried to propose, why didn't you go and just talk to her? You can say something, but you can do that without the huge audience. I suspect that you simply don't like this woman for whatever reason, which in and of itself is fine. Just don't make it everyone else's problem. Now your dad has to deal with an adult child and his GF not getting along.